the crowning achievement for my whole career to have this be the Labour statement.
If I've done it once, maybe I can do it twice. Why not?
You know that when you go out there, you hope to be the champion at the end of the day.
Played a lot of the Australian Opens and I've seen it change a bit over the years, and it's been a great tournament for me.
Shoot, I love you guys out here. Like, it's the best I've ever played any tournament in my whole life.
We're going to end up with the best facilities in the world for Grand Slam tennis.
One of sport's great modern-day rivalries produces yet another epic clash. Victoria Azarenka fulfills the dream. Novak Djokovic is the champion in Melbourne for the third time. That was simply extraordinary.
Good morning, everybody. You're one of the best players ever. You are one of the most respected guys on the tour. We made a history tonight.
Well, great to be able to relive the epic moments of Australian Open 2012. Who will ever forget that men's final? 5 hours and 53 minutes, and how 6 months goes very quickly. Welcome everyone. It's our live coverage this morning of the Australian Open launch for 2013, which is due to get underway here at Melbourne Park in around about half an hour's time. We'll take you live to the launch, but plenty to discuss in our pre-show, and great to be surrounded by two people who are certainly synonymous with being here at Melbourne Park right throughout the course of the year. A man that needs no introduction, of course, the great John Fitzgerald. Great to see you, Fitzy.
Thank you, Brett. Pleasure to be with you.
And Adrian Franklin, of course, is part of all our live streams here on AustralianOpen.com and YouTube. Great to see you, Adrian. Just the start of what is going to be a big summer.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when I'm on a panel with the two of you, John Fitzgerald and Brett Phillips, that the Australian Open is not too far away, so I'm looking forward to it.
That men's final, Fitzy, is still fresh in our minds, and if 2013 can emulate that, we are set for a magnificent fortnight in January next year.
Well, if we're going to emulate it, it means we're going to have two of the greatest ever back to back. Look, what a performance that was by both players. You know, yep. I think they ran the gauntlet of physical extremities, didn't they, in that 6 hour marathon, 5 hours 50.
Yeah, it was pretty good indeed, and both have gone on to have of course, interesting years. Rafa obviously battling a bit of injury at the moment. We hope he's going to be back for Australian Open 2013. More on that a little bit later on. And of course, Novak Djokovic, well, he's had tough competition this year with Roger Federer rising back to world number one, and Andy Murray, of course, breaking through at the US Open in August. When we think of the Australian Open, guys, we think of two names. We think of Rod Laver, who this magnificent centre court is named after, and the great Roger Federer, who's won it here 4 times, and an extremely popular player wherever he is in the world, particularly here in Australia. So they are the two names at the forefront.
Oh yeah. Both of those names bring a smile to my face. It was just sort of automatic. You know, I think of Rod, and you know, he was part of the reason I started to play the sport in the 70s, the late 60s, 70s. He encompasses what I believe is Australian greatness in the game and world greatness. One of my heroes, and you cannot dislike Roger Federer. He's been one of the great champions of all time, and it's tough to separate the two.
It is tough, and we're going to invite people, Adrian, very shortly to get involved out there. We'll give you the hashtag address, but Roger Federer, when we think of the last 10 years of men's tennis, he has been the number one man.
Yeah, absolutely. With both of those names, we speak about sportsmen and a lot of class with both players, and I think that's there's a strong connection with those words and the legend of the sport as well. Something I want to speak to Fitzy about at some point over the next half hour, though, is the opponents that both men had. Rafa Nadal obviously has an 18-10 record against Roger Federer. Rod Laver, he was a bit more dominant. So just want to put those words out there. Just maybe have a think about that. We'll chat about it in a little bit. But hashtag AusOpen and also hashtag GOAT or GOAT. Get online right now on Twitter. We're live. Send your comments in and we're going to be chatting about them over the next hour or so.
All right, before we get into the debate, let's take a look at Rod Laver versus Roger Federer.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to centre court for this year's championship final.
It is a tough question.
There's really no way to truly define that answer.
It's not a good argument.
One of the greats of all time, if not the greatest of all time.
But in terms of skill level, I would think that Rod Laver and Roger Federer are on a very similar level.
To win all 4 slams was an amazing effort.
Federer's got the most Grand Slams, so let's keep it nice and simple.
It's a different game these days by a lot of measuring sticks, but racket still is the measuring stick in men's tennis.
At the same time as you're always looking at the number, and the number is 17.
Federer and Laver, 2 of the greatest.
It's certainly a tough question to answer who is the greatest of all time, and everyone will certainly have their opinion. Rod Laver playing in a different era of tennis, in the Open era as an amateur and also as a professional, and Roger Federer, of course, well, he has been the best. And he's been challenged and he's risen back to being the best after, of course, succumbing to the great players around him. And he's played in a magnificent era of tennis alongside Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic, and Andy Murray really starting to emerge now. Let's have a quick chat about it, guys. More so on the Rod Laver case. 11 times I think he was able to win a Grand Slam, and of course he had success 4 times in Australia, and twice, Fitzy, in 1962 and also 1969 he won the entire Grand Slam, which is a very, very difficult thing to do in tennis.
Well, that's unprecedented. This is a really, really interesting comparison, because you look at Federer and he has, on paper, fact is he's won 17 major singles titles, more than anyone in history. The closest to him is Pete Sampras, who's won 14. But you look back in the 60s when Rod Laver dominated the game, and by the way, there was Ken Rosewall, there was Lou Hode, there was Frank Sedgman, there was Pancho Gonzalez, and a raft of other greats that have gone down in tennis folklore as well in that period of time as well. So there was some serious competition back then as well as there is today. But in Rod Laver's case, he wasn't allowed to play the 4 Grand Slams for 5 years running. So in the old days when amateur tennis was around and then the professional started, if you joined the professional ranks, which Rod Laver did in 1963, he wasn't allowed to play for 5 years because he was playing the troupe that was professional tennis. And so there was 20 opportunities that he missed in those mid-60s, right in the middle of his best years, that he couldn't compete. Now, how would that have affected his total number of singles titles? Probably quite drastically. Yeah, statistically it could have been a lot more, but his great skill and technique allowed him to adapt to both sort of eras of tennis. Well, I think so. He was really one of the forefathers of the modern game of topspin, being aggressive, hitting through the ball. Prior to that, there was wooden rackets, obviously, in those days. A lot of players chipped the ball, they hit the ball with a very flat trajectory. When Rod Laver came along, he started to come over the ball with his strength. He had an infamous arm, it's sort of legend, that left arm of his and how strong it was. And he started to rip the ball from both sides, forehand and backhand, with topspin, and it sort of modernised the game. No doubt. Roger Federer, we can mount obviously a great case, Adrian, and a guy who I suppose has taken men's tennis to a whole new level. When he emerged and we saw his full potential unfolding on the world tennis scene, and he's been challenged and has had to come back up again, which makes this year even more remarkable what he's been able to do and get back to Wimbledon and own that trophy again. It's an incredible career.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been so remarkable for me. I honestly thought that he was out of the game, but I think the mark of the man and the mark of the legend is that he was able to resurrect his career post US Open 2011. But I want to talk a little bit about social media. Yeah. Now, as I mentioned, hashtag OzOpen and hashtag GOAT. It's on the screen right there, so you can get online on Twitter now and comment. Social media has been alight over the past week with who is the greatest player, and I just want to read out a couple of our better responses and also talk to you gentlemen about whether you're on Facebook and Twitter as well, because you should get involved. So our first one from @JohnToby. The number of slams do matter, but not the only thing. Weeks at number 1, overall titles won, and the percentage of finals, also incredibly important, and most importantly the flexibility on the different court surfaces as well. So thank you @JohnToby. We've also got another one from @VJW79. I'm a coach and have people come for lessons purely because Roger Federer has inspired them to get out on the court. Now that is a big one that I want to speak to both of you about. Obviously, Roger Federer, he has a huge connection with the whole community of tennis. Rod Laver, Fitzy, Did he have the same? Was it the same sort of impact that he had on the kids?
Oh, I think so. Look, I think so. I mean, I was a bit of a youngster in the 60s. You may not believe that, Adrian, but I was. And, it wasn't such a global game then, and it was a much bigger place. It's a much smaller place now. We get from A to B very quickly in the modern transport system, and so I think it's easier to advertise the game now than it was back then. So more people now, I think, are abreast of getting instant information about the sport. But certainly Rod, I think, he was someone that everyone looked up to back in that era as well.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt that Rod Laver has created an enormous legacy, and so will Roger Federer. We're going to be still debating it. We're counting down to the official launch of the Australian Open for 2013. It's not too far away.
With MLC Tennis Hot Shots, kids are ready for tennis as soon as they can swing a racket. With modified balls, courts and rackets to make things easy, they'll serve, rally and score right away. Visit tennis.com.au today.
Australian Open shop. Doors are open, let's go shopping. Whoa, the official player towels. I gotta have one. These are the real deal. Sun's a scorcher, need a hat. Perfect. Balls, and more balls. Something for Mum. Yeah, thanks. Friendly staff. Retail therapy.
Welcome back to Melbourne Park. It's the official launch of the Australian Open for 2013. Plenty of people filing into our great little set here, and we're not too far away from getting underway. And of course, one man who's going to be right at the forefront is the tournament director, building up for another exciting 2 weeks come January. Craig Tyler, great to see you, Craig.
It's good to be here. This time of the year comes around pretty quickly, and not only looking forward to the Australian Open in January, but the next 20 minutes when we start our launch at 11 with some fantastic announcements we're really excited about.
No doubt. Plenty to look forward to, and all that coming up right here on AustralianOpen.com and of course on YouTube, wherever you are viewing us, of course our live stream. Craig, we've been discussing who is the greatest of all time, and the two names that we've mentioned who are so synonymous with this event, Rod Laver, of course the main court named after Rod, and all his great success here in Australia and around the globe when he played, and of course Roger Federer, who's as popular as anyone, any tennis player coming here to Melbourne Park. He's won 4 times, and who knows, he might win a 5th. And he is back as the world #1, which is an amazing achievement. You've had quite a bit to do with both gentlemen.
Well, very fortunate, very lucky, and to be in this role, to have that opportunity with both of them. But there's no question, winning is not just about the championships, it's about how you carry yourself, it's your attitude and how you treat people. And there's no question that those two have set the bar and set the standard on how to do that.
It's a debate. We've obviously been talking about Fitzy, but I mean, you see many a fine tennis player walk through the corridor here at Melbourne Park, and when we think of the Australian Open over a long time, there are many people who could lay claim to being great champions and maybe the greatest of all time who have come through and played great tennis here in Melbourne.
Yeah. No, well, there have been, and we've been lucky. I mean, who can forget 2012, the men's final, at 5 hours and 53 minutes of an unbelievable, scintillating tennis. And I think we've got. I think 2013 is going to present very similar experiences, and I think the drama and the intrigue that we had then, we're going to again repeat in 2013. We've got a new Grand Slam champion coming in, and Andy Murray of the US Open, and I think on the men's side you've got 5-6 players that are in there with a legitimate shot, and of course the same on the women. In fact, on the men's side, of the last 31 Grand Slams, there's only been 5 different winners. On the women's side, there's been 13. So it just shows you the parity in the sport.
Who are the names that resonate with you, Craig, when you think of the greatest tennis players of all time?
Well, certainly the two that you mentioned, Rod Laver and Roger Federer. The more recent, you know, we always have a soft spot for Rafa Nadal. We're going to talk a little bit about him today at 11 o'clock and his experiences and where he's at and if he's going to be back in January. And you know, many of the Australian greats, Kenny Roosevelt's always been one of the favourites, because I remember as a kid, you know, a young kid watching him play and watching him play Jimmy Connors at Wimbledon, and so those have always been special moments. We lucky in Australia, we've got, you know, more legends and greats of the sport than anyone else, and I'm actually going to mention that again at 11 in the fact that our legends can just come around the corner and be at the Australian Open. It's harder to get the legends from other countries to come to be here in January, but we're very lucky.
No doubt. Fitzy, of course, we've been talking about the men, but when we think about, you know, the greatest female player of all time, it's hard to go past a lady like Margaret Court, who's just been obviously a great figure in this country, around the globe. 62 Grand Slam titles, 24 singles titles, 11 of those at the Australian Open. Another true champion of the game.
Yeah, that's incomparable. No one has a record as good as that. And in the women's side of the game, I think it is easier to suggest that the debate is not the same as the men's. In the men's, there is a debate. In the women's, I think, hey, call me biased, but I think Margaret Court stands alone. Maybe Martina Navratilova would be the one that I would say comes in just underneath Margaret, but Margaret Court, for the records that you just mentioned, and the dominance she displayed in those years, for me, is the greatest player ever to play.
Yeah, the great Steffi Graf up there as well. I think she won 22, I think, Craig, off the top of my head.
Yeah, she's, no, but I think Fitzy's right, is that Margaret Court, and having Margaret here is a really special treat too, but there's no question that I don't think that's ever going to be repeated, that level.
Busy few months, no doubt. You're going to reveal some information a little bit later on regarding Rafael Nadal, but the first Grand Slam of the year, obviously the top men and the women, they want to be here.
They do. You know, we've been fortunate again in the past 5 years. We've had the top 100 men, the top 100 women show up in January and compete, and we are lucky we start at the beginning of the year and everyone's refreshed after taking a bit of a break, and we have every indication that that's going to happen again.
I suppose every year the Australian Open sort of goes to a whole new level, and you have 6 months to go into planning mode. Is it tough to take it to another level when it's been so good?
Well, when you have a good team, everything's easy, and we're fortunate to have a great team, and you know, we work on each event. Is 2014, 15, the team's working on now. So we like, and that's one thing that I think we do the best, is that the Australian Open, we're willing to innovate, we're willing to push the boundaries and make it special.
Great to have you here. You will be, of course, with us on our live stream very shortly. We spent some time recently at the US Open, our cameras interviewing some of the greats of tennis about who arguably is the best, Federer or Laver.
That, you are opening up a contentious debate with that one. Of all time.
I'm a big stats guy. You know, Federer's got the most Grand Slams. Let's keep it nice and simple.
I think Roger is the best one. He's a fantastic player on court, and out court it's an amazing person.
Roger is probably, to me, Roger is in front.
I don't like to getting too much, you know, in the past, because, you know, I don't think that you can compare the players.
Oh my gosh. I mean, of course, Rod Laver.
Rod Laver gave up 6.5 years of potential major championships because he needed to go make a living, and he pressed along with many, many others for an open era.
I mean, I really do think he's, you know, one of the greats of all time, you know, if not the greatest of all time, and one of the nicest champions. I had a chance to meet him later on, and that was what was so remarkable about him, and the way he won and when he did it, the you know, obstacles he had to overcome in his time, and to do it in, you know, not once but twice. You know, I think there's a lot of reasons why you would consider him the greatest.
One of the things in greatness is realizing your potential. So having a lot of talent and maximizing it, I think that's greatness. I think guts under pressure is greatness. I think beauty on the court is greatness. There's so many different ways to to define that and appreciate what happens within the confines of an athletic field.
The way you show up on a tennis court, what you bring to the game, how did you leave it better off, I guess. Yeah, so that's kind of how I define greatness. It's just a day in, day out greatness you bring to the sport.
I've never stated who I think is the greatest player of all time in the men's game, but I do say that the most complete player that I've ever seen, I believe, is Roger Federer. But to say who's the greatest, it's a nice discussion over a beer, but there's really no way to truly define that answer.
And welcome back. We're not too far away from the start of the official launch of Australian Open 2013. Now, you may be wondering where my co-hosts have disappeared to, John Fitzgerald and Brett Phillips. They've actually gone to sign up for Twitter and Facebook right now. They are that excited. So guys, make sure you get on Twitter right now. You can write anything you like, questions, comments. Today, it's who is the greatest player of all time. So it's hashtag #OzOpen or hashtag GOAT for greatest of all time. So get on now. I've got the iPad with me over here. So I'm going to read out some comments here. This competition's been going for the past week or so. Everyone's been writing in, whether it's Laver, whether it's Federer, what is greatness, all sorts of different questions. So I've got a couple here. Slam numbers are part of it, but it depends on how much top level competition there has been at the time. So obviously these days, competition in tennis is at its highest point. I think there's a statistic where there are more than, over the past 2 decades, there's been an increase of 50% of different countries that are playing in the top 100, or that are in the top 100 men's players. So an increase of 50% over the past 2 decades. So that just says how many more people are playing tennis, how many more countries are involved. So maybe that's a little bit of an indication that Roger Federer is truly the greatest, or at least one of the greatest players of all time. Another comment here, there's less competition, the sport is better than ever now, and the quality of players is incredible. Rod Laver, there wasn't much in his way at the time, so a little bit of a controversial one there. So let's talk about the past Australian Open. There was arguably the greatest final of all time. Novak Djokovic played Rafa Nadal. We've got highlights right now.
The 2012 Australian Open wrapped up with the #1 player in the world, Novak Djokovic, taking on the world #2, Rafael Nadal, for the men's singles title. The head-to-head is in the Spaniards' favour, 16-13, but last year the pair met 6 times in finals, with Djokovic winning each one. Nadal was looking to make a statement early. Nadal striking first, breaking the Djokovic serve to go 3-2 up. Djokovic got his opportunity to break back not long after, levelling the opening set at 4-all. Nadal was able to carry the momentum from there, breaking Djokovic to go 6-5 up. Despite Djokovic saving a couple of set points, Nadal was able to serve out the opening set 7-5. The second set was following a similar pattern to the first, with some long rallies keeping the crowd on the edge of its seat. But Djokovic was making the running, breaking the Nadal serve to take a 3-1 lead. The Serbian was racing away with the set, getting out to a 5-2 lead and having a set point, which Nadal saved, and he continued to pile on the pressure. But Djokovic wasn't going to be denied, breaking the Nadal serve again to level the match at 1-all. The third set belonged to the Serbian, breaking Nadal to go to a 3-1 lead. It was a dominant display from the world number one, breaking again to take the set 6-2. The match extended into its third hour at the beginning of the fourth set, with games going on serve. The best chance of a break was Djokovic at 4-3, but Nadal saved 3 break points and was able to level at 4 games all. Just after that game, the heavens opened and play was delayed while the court was cleaned up. Djokovic wasn't affected, holding serve with one of the shots of the match. Nadal continued to fight and the set went to a tie-break. It was Djokovic setting the pace in the tie-break, grabbing a decisive lead. But Nadal fought back, roaring into the breaker to level at 5-all. The Spaniard levelling the match at 2 sets all. The fifth set was a battle of attrition, neither player giving an inch, the first break going to Nadal. But again, Djokovic rose from the canvas to break back immediately. The capacity crowd on Rod Laver Arena wasn't going anywhere despite it being 1 in the morning. We also crossed the mark for the longest match at the Australian Open. The decisive moment in the final set coming with Djokovic breaking to go 6-5 up. The world number one was able to serve it out and take his third Australian Open title in 5 hours and 53 minutes in the greatest final in Australian Open history. It was also the longest match in Grand Slam final history and a fitting way to end the 2012 Australian Open tournament.
Here's the world number one. He is the Australian Open champion of 2012 Australia, Novak Djokovic.
And welcome back. We are not too far away, counting down to the official launch of the 2013 Australian Open. What a final it was in 2012. You've just seen highlights there. An epic 5-set match. I think it finished at about 2 o'clock in the morning. It was absolutely ridiculous. Novak Djokovic, don't you just love him looking up into the sky there just after he won the match? It was as though he knew the camera was there. So we are live and interactive here. So we've got Twitter and our Facebook page as well. We've actually just had a comment on the Twitter page, #OzOpen. So from Julia Dong, she was just obviously watching the highlights there between Djokovic and Nadal. So highlights of that match, bringing back all the emotions. So ready for the Australian Open to start again. So thank you very much, Julia Dong. So make sure you get on Twitter, #OzOpen. We've had a lot of comments on our Facebook page as well over the past week or so. So I've got a couple of them to read out. Myra Banaza has said, regardless of the wonderful match that it would be full of beautiful and graceful shots, unbelievable tactics and foresight. Much more interesting perhaps than watching the power of the current baseline players that we see out there today. So thank you very much, Myra, for writing in on our Facebook page. We had Andy Overton, who has said, players of yesterday could easily translate their games with the new equipment. Players of today would be sobbing if they had to play with yesterday's equipment. So another interesting point there as well. So make sure you get online. The launch is coming up soon. It's going to go for about an hour, and then afterwards we'll be back here to recap, debrief on what happened, and also respond to any questions and comments that you've noted down on our Twitter or Facebook page. So you'll see right there, the room is filling up. How good does that look? Also, coming up not too far away, we've got some Australian Open highlights. So we're going to cross to them right now. Be back very soon.
The 2012 Australian Open premiered to a record crowd. A ceremony entranced onlookers at centre stage, the opening act performed by Bernard Tomic, whose late run saw 22nd seed Fernando Verdasco eliminated from the running, and a homegrown audience well and truly captured by the young Australian's efforts. The shock came on day 2 when home hero Sam Stosur lost at the hands of Romanian Sorana Costea.
It's disappointing for sure, and I know that everyone was behind me, so it's more disappointing that obviously I don't get another chance to step out on court.
Hewitt's match was the highlight in a thrilling 4-set victory against German Cedric Marcel Steve. The hottest seats in the house were on Margaret Court Arena when David Nalbandian let go at the umpire. He eventually lost to American John Isner in the 4-hour and 41-minute battle. Later, Marcus Baghdadis would soon lose his cool and the match. Leighton Hewitt survived the battle of the Grand Slam champions, reaching the 3rd round after opponent Andy Roddick was forced to retire.
I said, ooh, it's hot in here. There must be some Tomic in the atmosphere. Woo!
It was a tough competition between Tomic and 13th seed Alexander Dolgopolov, the ball eventually falling in Tomic's favour, thrusting the young Tomic into the path of the indestructible Roger Federer.
I hope I play good against him. I have to play good to have any chance, I think, and I'm playing good and have a lot of confidence, and it's my home Grand Slam. People are going to support me, but sometimes it's not support that can make you beat Roger. I think you need to know how to play tennis. You need to play tennis well on the day, and if I have any chance of beating him, that's why he's the greatest player of the sport.
With the start of the Junior Championships, all eyes shifted from Bernard to sister Sarah, but she was defeated in the 1st round. That evening they swapped spots. For everyone else, it was a mesmerising, if not painful lesson, as her brother learned some costly tricks at the hands of a master. Clijsters made a remarkable recovery after Lienaar disappointed fans, missing 4 chances at match point in the 2nd set. But the drama really unfolded on Hisense Arena when 7th seed Thomas Berdych felt Almagro had deliberately lined him up. Berdych won, but his decision not to shake hands was not well received. Serena Williams shocked the tennis world. After a long injury layoff, the 5-time champion just didn't have the stamina, succumbing to unseeded Russian Ekaterina Makarova.
She played really well. She went for broke on a lot of shots, and I made 37 errors, and that kind of tells the story of the match.
Kai Nishikori became the first Japanese man in the Open era to reach a quarter-final, beating Jo Wilfried Tsonga in 5 sets. In the 2nd week,
The toughest match that I played is not tough.
Nadal is 2 games away.
It was probably the best match I ever played, most exciting one.
Oh, stop it. When they write the story of the great tennis matches ever played, this one has got to be right up the front of the book.
And what a way to start. Who could forget that epic men's final between Novak Djokovic and Rafael Nadal earlier this year. The culmination of a fabulous fortnight, and no doubt more memorable moments are in store for us at AO 2013. And a very special welcome to all of you here to our newest stadium at Melbourne Park, and also around the world as we are live streaming on AustralianOpen.com and also on YouTube. Plenty coming up this morning, including a discussion on the greatest player of all time. And to help us explore that particular topic, we say a very good morning to our commentary team of Brett Phillips and John Fitzgerald.
Good morning, Craig. Yes, fantastic to be here. It's a hot debate, Fitzy, leading into today on our social media. It's centred on who is the greatest of all time. It's not an easy question to answer, isn't it? I mean, both these names are synonymous with the Australian Open.
They're both names that bring a smile instantly to my face. I mean, Rod Laver was my hero, one of my two heroes, really. And, of course, Roger Federer has gone beyond doubt with the amount of titles he's won, that he has dominated the most recent era. So I'm looking forward to that debate a lot more as the morning goes on.
Absolutely. Craig, I know you're all over Twitter, of course, so everyone can have their say on the subject. Who is the greatest of all time? Hashtag GOAT.
Thank you, Brett and Fitzy. We'll get back to that later. We'll head to the commentary box throughout our launch of Australian Open 2013. It's time now to introduce our first speaker. He is a former Australian junior hardcourt doubles champion and former ATP-ranked player in both singles and doubles. Following his playing days, it was a change of courts as he pursued a career in law and is currently a partner of Gaydon's Lawyers. As Director of the Board of Tennis of New South Wales in 2002, holding the role of Vice President from 2005 until 2007 and President since 2007, he led a movement to modernise and to unite the game. It was this platform that saw him elected President of Tennis Australia in 2010. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Steve Healy.
Good morning, Minister, the Honourable Dennis Napthine, the Tennis Australia Board, all of our sponsor representatives, tennis dignitaries, and all of our invited guests. I would like to officially welcome you all to the launch of Australian Open 2013. After last year's incredible event, our goal is quite simple. We want to continually grow the Australian Open as one of the world's premier sporting events. We want it to grow physically on the site, as a powerhouse event with major exposure in the Asia-Pacific region, and to play a global lead role in the international sport of tennis. With the massive redevelopment of Melbourne Park, our Asia-Pacific growth strategy and our on and off court plans for the long-term future of the Australian Open, we think we are well on the way to achieving our next set of target aims. Rest assured, as we continue to fully develop and nurture this event and this site, we do it with an eye for cutting-edge innovation and 21st century progress, but also determined to recognise and celebrate our unique and proud past as a tennis nation. In 2013, we look forward to honouring 14-time Grand Slam singles winner, including a record 6 Australian Open singles titles, Roy Emerson, at our now traditional Legends Lunch on the final Saturday. With our rich tennis history in mind, it is also my very pleasant duty to announce the Hall of Fame inductee for 2013, the wonderful Judy Dalton. Judy was born in Melbourne and reached a career-high singles ranking of number 7 in 1968. She won 9 doubles Grand Slams and was part of 2 Fed Cup Australian winning teams. But Judy was also something of a pioneer, one of the group known as the Original 9, who signed symbolic $1 contracts to help start the Virginia Slim circuit and in essence pave the way for the start of women's professional tennis, which celebrates its 40th year in 2013. Congratulations, Judy, on a wonderful contribution, and I look forward to celebrating your induction in January. And finally, with a view to the future, I also want to congratulate our Junior Davis Cup boys and Junior Fed Cup girls who finished 2nd and 4th respectively in their competitions in Europe on the weekend. We do have a great tennis history in this country, and the efforts of those youngsters bode well for the future. Thank you.
I can't wait for 2013, when we will again present the biggest and the best sporting event in the world in January. In 2013, our sponsor family will again help us to deliver a truly world-class event. For For over 10 years, our major sponsor Kia has supported and grown with us. This year, the fleet of Kia cars made over 40,000 trips and clocked up over 350,000 kilometres. Rolex, a symbol of prestige and performance and official timekeeper of the Australian Open since 2008, has signed another multi-year deal. With associate sponsor ANZ, we share a common goal of engaging with and increasing our presence in Asia Pacific. The huge crowds that come every year to enjoy Grand Slam Oval and relax at the Jacobs Creek Open Dining are a testament to the strength of their brand. We welcome Mount Franklin, a homegrown sponsor and official supplier of water. Our telecommunications and technology partners Optus and IBM continue to help us push the boundaries on how we interact with our fans on-site, online and around the world. Our on-court staff, from ball kids to chair umpires, are outfitted in the iconic Lacoste crocodile. As well as helping us drive participation with MLC Tennis Hotshots, MLC provide vital financial investment services. Our association with Medibank enables us to promote our collective message of encouraging Australians to lead an active and healthy lifestyle. The Victorian Government are investing $363 million into the Melbourne Park precinct, recognising the vast importance of the Australian Open. The City of Melbourne comes alive with the international flavour of the Australian Open. The Australian Open is more than just another sporting event. The Australian Open showcases Melbourne to the world. The Australian Open makes Melbourne shine.
Our next speaker represented Victoria at junior level before embarking on the professional ATP tour from 1985 to 1987. Following this, he moved his career aspirations into business. And before joining Tennis Australia, he amassed 18 years of extensive experience as the chief executive of global information, communications and technology companies. Under his leadership, the Australian Open has enjoyed a 25% increase in attendance and secured a bright future at Melbourne Park until 2036 in partnership with the Victorian Government. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tennis Australia CEO, Mr. Steve Wood.
Victorian Minister for Major Projects, the Honourable Dennis Napthine, Tennis Australia Board, our sponsor representatives, tennis dignitaries, the media, and all of our invited guests, good morning. This morning I want to talk to you about what is effectively the next chapter in firmly entrenching the Australian Open as one of the greatest annual sporting events in the world. And firstly, I want to announce the biggest prize money purse in the history of the sport. We have led the world in prize money for tennis, and next year will be no different. So Australian Open 2013 will offer a record prize money purse of $30 million. This is a $4 million increase over last year, and the biggest single increase in our event's history, and in fact, any event's history in tennis. We certainly didn't make this decision lightly. Indeed, our business will suffer some pain as we go to achieve this. But we are committed to making a contribution, a major contribution, to the compensation and the conditions of the players on tour. And I think $30 million is a major contribution. We won't break down how we distribute that prize money as yet, because we want some input from the playing group about the fairest method of distribution. And we want to help ensure that the financial viability for the lower ranked players is in existence. I also want to talk today about our increased commitment to the Asia Pacific region. I've just returned from a business tour with the Premier of Victoria, and we're keen on helping the government enhancing the great work that they're already doing in the region. The exposure the Australian Open gets across Asia is at an all-time high, but we want to go further. So we're holding for the first time the Asia Pacific Wildcard Playoff in Nanjing in China. A little piece of the Australian Open will be played in China. And we'll be doing that later this month, as well as running the Asian Pacific leg of our Australian Open International Trophy Tour, which will go to Japan later this week. We're also pleased to announce our ball kit exchange program with the China Open, inviting ball kids to exchange with the Australian Open in January this year. We are the Grand Slam of Asia Pacific, and we're proud of that. Another big initiative I'd like to talk about today and have the focus of this launch is the redevelopment of Melbourne Park. What is an incredible job that the state government has done with this. The last 12 months, this site has undergone major transformation and is really shaping up to be the best entertainment and sporting precinct in the world. The work being done is an extraordinary project that will put the sport of tennis and the Melbourne Park precinct at the forefront of world-class standards for players, for spectators and for our broadcasters. The state government asked us to commit the Australian Open to Melbourne for another 25 years in return for the redevelopment. And we're extremely glad that we did that. For this partnership will keep the Grand Slam event where it belongs, at the forefront of the tennis world. In 2012, we may have well had our best ever Australian Open, some of the best matches ever seen. But in 2013, we are even more ready than ever before to play it all again. Thank you.
Our next speaker's electorate on the Victorian southwest coast is not only home to the beautiful Great Ocean Road, but also the Warrnambool Lawn Tennis Club, which last year completed a $177,000 upgrade to their courts and facilities. The Victorian Government's $366 million expansion of Melbourne Park and the Melbourne Sporting Precinct is a commitment to ensure the Australian Open remains the world's best. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the great tennis partnerships led by Steve Wood and his doubles partner, Minister for Major Projects, Dr. Dennis Snapthine.
Thank you very much to Steve Healy, the President of Tennis Australia, Steve Wood, CEO, Craig Tiley, the Australian Open Tournament Director, sponsors and partners of the Australian Open. My tennis career was restricted to the asphalt courts of Murnee and Winchelsea in Western Victoria, but I found on those courts great comradeship, great friendship and great sport, and that is the heart and soul of tennis. But in the Australian Open, we have not only a great tournament, but we have a fantastic institution in Melbourne, Victoria and Australia. It is a fantastic event at a superb venue in the greatest sporting precinct in the world. This year, the attendances were 686,000 people, a record attendance for the Australian Open. There was 135 million viewers on a worldwide television audience. And now we've seen the announcement of a record $30 million in prize money for the 2013 tournament. The Australian Open is not just a great sporting event. It is a vital part of the major events program here in Victoria. It is an essential part of our economy, providing thousands of jobs and millions of dollars to the bottom line of this state and businesses in this area. But most of all, it is a fantastic sporting event with the very best of the world competing in great facilities here in Melbourne, Victoria. One of the great strengths of Melbourne is our sporting precinct, and Melbourne Park has excellent facilities for tennis, which are right in the heart of our city, which adds to this great sporting precinct and the Great Australian Open. But like all sporting champions, you can't rest on your laurels. You're going to continually look to improve and make yourself better. and the Victorian Government is proudly working with Tennis Australia to make Melbourne Park even better. When we look out today, we can see work being done at the moment at Margaret Court Arena. This will transform Margaret Court Arena with an extra 1,500 seats. It will provide a new operable roof for Margaret Court Arena, which will make the Australian Open the only Grand Slam tournament in the world with 3 operable roofed stadiums. For 2012, 13 and 2014, the players and the builders will have an alternation on Margaret Court Arena, with the builders packing up just prior to the Open and the players taking over for the Open. And as soon as the last ace is served, the builders will return to complete their project. But by 2015, we will see a larger roofed Margaret Court Arena, which will really add to the facilities here. At the other end of this facility here, Melbourne Park, work on the Eastern Plaza and the National Tennis Centre is well ahead of schedule. And we will have new entrances to Hisense Arena, improved ticketing facilities, 2 new balconies. We will also have a magnificent 21 additional courts. Later tonight, this very night, the final span of the Edwin Flack Bridge will be put into place. This over Olympic Boulevard will provide that link between Amy Park, across to the Eastern Plaza and Hisense Arena, and across onto the MCG, which will just be a wonderful link in this great sporting precinct. When this $366 million Stage 1 redevelopment is completed, we'll have 3 operable roofed arenas. We'll have a fantastic new training facility for the Australian Tennis Centre. We'll have 21 new courts for players, including today there is clay court facilities being installed on this very day. There'll be expanded improved access, new open spaces, links across the site, and better comfort amenity for patrons and better facilities for players. And again, we're not letting it rest there. We've already announced $5 million in last year's state budget to start developing the next stage of this magnificent redevelopment of this great facility. And as Steve has said, only recently the Premier, with his super trade mission to China, announced the introduction of the Australian Open Asia Pacific Wildcard Playoff in Nanjing, which will take place later this month. So there's some fantastic developments, and that all coupled with the $30 million prize money announcement guarantees that the 2013 Australian Open here in Melbourne, Victoria will be the biggest and the best ever, and will be a stepping stone to continued growth and development. So I urge people to get involved, get your tickets early for what will be the best ever Australian Open in January 2013. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. We're delighted you could join us this morning. Well, we mentioned the question earlier, who is the greatest of all time? It's now time to delve further into this topic. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Centre Court for this year's championship final.
It is a tough question.
There's really no way to truly define that answer. It's not a good argument.
One of the greats of all time, if not the greatest of all time.
But in terms of skill level, I would think that Rod Laver and Roger Federer are on a very similar level.
To win all 4 slams was an amazing effort.
Federer's got the most Grand Slams. Let's keep it nice and simple.
It's a different game these days by a lot of measuring sticks. The racket still is the measuring stick in men's tennis.
At the same time as you're always looking at the number, and the number is 17.
Federer and Laver, 2 of the greatest.
Well, John Fitzgerald, where do you begin to compare these 2 greats? We've been debating it out the back. Roger Federer, Rod Laver, they played in different eras, 2 great champions, surrounded by great opponents. How do you begin to compare them?
Well, they both had great opponents. Very difficult to compare eras, isn't it? It's almost impossible, but it's worth a thought, I think. And these 2 players are commonly referred to as the standouts of their time.
No doubt. Roger has won 17 and who knows? There might be more. He looks in terrific nick at 31 years of age. He's got back to world #1 this year, which is an achievement in itself. And of course, Rod played in an era where he was an amateur, he was a pro. 11 titles. The stadium is named after him here. They are synonymous with this event. Tell us just a little bit of reflection about Rod Laver.
Well, Rod didn't win as many Grand Slam singles titles as Roger Federer, but there's an asterisk next to Rod. He spent 5 years of his career in the best 5 years of his life, where he turned professional, couldn't play the Grand Slam events. So who knows, out of the 20 that he missed over those 5 years, who knows what his numbers might have been as well.
No doubt. Or to perhaps move a little closer to solving the question, it's worth asking, what is greatness?
You know, it's so many ways that you see greatness.
The way you show up on a tennis court, what you bring to the game, you leave it better off, I guess. That's kind of how I define greatness.
One of the things in greatness is realizing your potential. So having a lot of talent and maximizing it, I think that's greatness. I think guts under pressure is greatness. I think beauty on the court is greatness.
And I think you have to know yourself and know the competition that you're playing and being able to excel at the right times in the game.
Is the champion again.
There's so many different ways to define that and appreciate what happens within the confines of an athletic field. There's so many ways that people reveal themselves to us as the fans in those situations of extreme pressure.
And that's the reply.
Results, the way you get those results, longevity at the top, excellence under pressure, and I think the way you represent the sport. I think that's the way you really look at the type of players and regard them over a long period of time as to how great they've been for our game.
Greatness, John Fitzgerald, how do you define greatness?
Well, it's tough to argue with any of those definitions. I love Darren Cahill there at the end when he almost summed it up. I think the athleticism, the grace, how players perform under pressure. But I think more than anything, it's very, very difficult to argue with numbers. And the players that win the most Grand Slams, the biggest events, they win their matches under pressure more often than anyone else. They play better at the big occasions, and the numbers speak for themselves.
And we've been privileged to see many of those fine, great moments right here at Melbourne Park.
Well, we have, and nothing more so than the men's final last year that went for over 5 hours and 50 minutes.
Is that still going?
No. Well, it might resume at the beginning of or at the end of this tournament. Yeah. Who knows?
Well, people are getting involved, of course. Hashtag GOAT, GOAT as we're affectionately calling it, but greatest of all time. That is the hashtag. Get involved and hashtag Oz Open and certainly join in the debate. We may never know, Fitzy, who is the greatest of all time. Laver versus Federer. It's a burning question, but we'll just leave a little bit to the imagination.
faces who'll be rejoining us in 2013. Well, our next speaker, a two-time NCAA championship coach with the University of Illinois, coach of a former world number 6, a former South African Davis Cup leader, and the guy who's run the most successful string of Australian Opens in the history of the event. Ladies and gentlemen, he's on the starting blocks and ready for his 7th Australian Open. Please welcome Tournament Director Craig Tiley.
Morning, everyone. It's great to be here again, and actually before I start, I'd like to draw your memories back to 2012 in what was one of the greatest matches of all time.
Remarkable match. It was the longest match I ever played in my career.
Rafael Nadal takes the first step.
It was just an incredible occasion, you know, to play almost 6 hours at the finals of the Australian Open against one of my biggest rivals.
Djokovic levels up the match.
You look around and you see the watch.
He's on his way, 2 sets to 1.
3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, finally 5 hours 30, so it seems like you're never going to finish.
He knows the job is still there to be done.
We went to the 5th set. That was just very exhausting for both of us physically.
Might that be the straw that breaks the camel's back?
Probably a match done. Gonna be in my mind, not because I lost, no, because the way that we played.
Back-to-back breaks of serve.
There was a lot of long rallies, a lot of important moments.
Might that be the end of the resistance?
All the troubles that I had during all the match. I enjoyed it. I tried to be there, to find solutions all the time. I played a lot with my heart. I played a lot with my mind. Something that is nice to be around and not just play tennis.
In a moment, he'll be serving for the championship in 2012.
15,000 people that stayed until 1:30 a.m. and it's incredible.
It's 20-2 on a Monday morning in Melbourne. Hardly anyone has left. Hardly anyone was able to leave.
Good morning, everybody.
You're one of the best players ever. You are one of the most respected guys on the tour. We made a history tonight, and you know, unfortunately, there couldn't be 2 winners tonight.
How great is that? Even if you're not in tennis, it's got to send chills down your spine. I'd like to start with a story, and it's a story of remarkable courage in our sport. And I was reminded of this over this past weekend and watching some great sport in the AFL and NRL finals. And it's a story of a young man you all know well, who's won a lot. In fact, he's won some great events, great championships. He's someone that we admire. This is a story about one of his losses. He's not only brilliant, he's honourable, and he pushes the physical boundaries beyond the extent which we would believe would be imaginable. In fact, we know that he loves the battle more than he actually loves the outcome. And this was a story at the Australian Open. Recently, on the eve of the Open, I was summoned into the medical room, and there this player was lying on the bed, the medical bed, with his leg up straight and unable to actually straighten it. His team around him said that it was over. On the eve of the Open, he could not play. He wanted to wait until the next day, Monday morning. So Monday morning came, and he got up and still couldn't walk. Fortunately, his match was scheduled on Tuesday, and that was done on Friday. Tuesday morning came, and he could walk a little bit, and he went out into the court and hit some balls for 5 minutes. Anyway, that's not the real story. The real story was then in the second week, when the same player was walking onto the court to play one of his mates. And he went out, and after about 2 games, felt the sharp pain in his leg. Some of you may recall, he left the court, went into a small medical room that we have beside Rod Laver Arena. And I ran around, walked into the medical room, and outside our referee, Wayne McEwen, was standing. And inside, this player was lying again on the bench with the medical doctor. The doctor turned to me and said, "It's not going to happen." And the first thing that went through my mind was, when was the last time in the Australian Open that at the end of the second week, we had one of the greatest within 2 games having to retire? I know there were over 200 million people watching, 15,000 people in the stands. The player was distraught. And he looked both the doctor and Wayne and myself in the eye and said, no. He wasn't going to go and let his mate down. He wasn't going to go and let the 15,000 fans down, especially in Australia. And he wasn't going to go and let the 200 million broadcast TV audience around the world down. Anyway, the match went on. 3 competitive sets. This player lost. And he lost to his mate, you may all guess by now, was David Ferrer. And the player I'm talking about is Rafa Nadal. And Rafa represents everything that our event is about. Why do I want to share the story with you? Well, Rafa right now, today, is going through the same battles, the same physical hardships, the same challenges. He indicated actually to us last week, personally by text, that he loves the Australian Open. He won it in 2010. He wants to come back. And he plans on the Australian Open being his first event back in January. And you can see that picture earlier of him lying in the Australian Open towel. So with all the drama of 2012, all the intrigue, what do we have in store for 2013? I'll run through a few quick initiatives. Some of you may have heard. Firstly, Hawkeye, the electronic line calling system. We're going to have it on courts 2 and 3 as well. So we now have 5 courts with that. We'll have new scoreboards around the site, not only for the players, but also for our fans, who will not only have more seating, but more shade. We've introduced, just over here next to the indoor courts, 3 practice courts. We're calling Practice Court Row. They'll have an overhanging balcony that our fans can go walk up on and watch the practice, and over on the other side see a big screen of when the players are practicing and where they're practicing, so they can run to those courts and watch their heroes. You know about our 10-point player experience. We've now extended that to 10-point fan experience. And what that is there's 10 times throughout the event that we actually engage the players, and we're going to provide world-class concierge-type service for the players as well as the fans during those 10 times. MLC Hotshots, our engagement program, getting young kids playing tennis. We've got over 300,000 in Australia today, and we'll have more courts on site for those that come on and into the venue to be able to enjoy Hotshots. You've probably already heard, or you have already heard, what Steve mentioned about the prize money. We're very proud of the fact that we've gone to $30 million, and we are supporting the lower-ranked players in their quest for greater compensation, and that we're also continuing to lead the way. We believe it's the right thing to do. On the women's side, Women's Legends event. Happy to announce that we've got 2 former champions returning. Actually 3, because Martina Hingis had such a great time bringing the trophy onto the court women's final last year that she is coming back to play. And then Amelie Mauresmo, Lindsay Davenport. On the men's side, a new person returning, a former finalist, Thomas Enquist. And then, of course, we got Goran Ivanisevic. And then the comedy duo of Henri Leconte and Mansour Bonrami again. And Todd and his team are doing a great job getting them all to come. Special announcement. In fact, I did receive this text this morning, which I thought would be good enough to share with you. And the person said, "I love Australia and its people. The opportunity to return to Rod Laver Arena in January will provide me with a chance to catch up with so many friends and be reminded of the great memories we share together in Melbourne. Over all the times we have cried and we have celebrated, I feel half Australian. Any guesses? Yes, it's Andre Agassi. So for the first time since he played, Andre will be returning to enjoy the festivities of the final weekend. We're excited about welcoming him. And then finally onto the draw, the women's draw and the men's draw. Well, on the women's side, of the last 31 Grand Slam titles, 13 of them have been won by different players, and 11 of those have been Serena Williams. You would argue that Serena, coming in after winning the Olympic gold medal, Wimbledon, the US Open, is playing her best tennis, but she's not number one in the world. That's held by Victoria Azarenka, our defending champion. Victoria's playing great tennis, but I will not forget this year, Sam Stosur, our own Sam Stosur's match against Victoria in the US Open quarterfinals, which was arguably one of the best matches that Sam played. She's right there, again, for a third straight year, be inside the top 10. So in the women's draw, with all that parity, we'll again see some great tennis. And then we go to the men's side. In the men, 31 last slams, 17 of them have been Roger Federer, but there's only been 5 players, and a recent player added to that list, Andy Murray, who won the US Open, and is coming into January probably playing the best tennis and in a really great frame of mind. But Roger Federer's number one, and our defending champion, Novak Djokovic, who you mentioned earlier has won this event 3 times, is number 2. And Novak, he said that in the press this weekend, he'd like nothing more than to knock Roger off his perch and get number 1. And he'll come back to the Australian Open ready to play. And of course, I mentioned Rafa Nadal. So, with our own, Bernard Tomic, would like him to repeat some of the successes he had last year. And then, of course, Leighton Hewitt. And we know Leighton will be back on the court, battling away and showing everyone how it's done. So again, the intrigue and some of the great excellence we're going to have with the sport is going to be repeated in 2013. Probably enough from me. Let's hear it from them. Thank you.
It's a Grand Slam where I've had really consistent results. I always love starting the year there. It's so much fun. There's so much energy. To win it, it was just amazing, and in the way I did it, it was just incredible, and it will always be in my heart.
You feel like, oh, I will see the old friends like every year, you know. So feeling was pretty good.
I love Australia and I love the Grand Slams in Melbourne, so I'm always so happy that I can be there.
It's always good fun going there. They love their sport. The Aussie Open's, one of the most fun tournaments that we have on the tour.
I really love Australia, and it's always great weather and very nice people, and it's always the great atmosphere out there.
The good thing is many Argentinian fans come to watch me there, and the tournament is very lovely. The fans are so exciting with all the players.
Because there's not many places in the world that you can have such a crowd and such a fans like them. So I always enjoy the moments to play my matches.
I love playing obviously the night matches. The crowd gets behind you. It's an electric atmosphere in Rod Laver Arena, and when I eventually do retire and stop playing, it's definitely something I'll really miss.
Things can only get better from this year, and I think, I got the game, I've just got to put it together, and of course there's nowhere greater than doing it in Australia in front of a home crowd.
I've always loved coming to the Australian Open, and it's one of those great events we have on tour, and haven't been thinking about it too much yet, but it's been a fabulous last 12 months for me, and of course I hope always to be injury free when I look so far ahead, that I will show up in great shape.
God, I love that tournament. I love Aussie Open. It's like every January I look forward to it. I was depressed when I missed it, the year before, and this year when I rolled my ankle, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So I really look forward to it this year.
Well, Australian Open is my most successful Grand Slam. I won it 3 times, and I always enjoy playing there. So I always have high expectations for myself because I really like that tournament.
Tennis climate right now, it's going to be another hot field. So much depth in the men's and the women's game. Who are you leaning to with 3.5 months out, but just looking at the form of the players and what we might be in store for come January next year?
Look, it's still hard to go past the big four in the men's game. They're getting a little older now, some of them, but I think Roger, for me, is still the outstanding player, you know, in all conditions. Andy Murray now we have to look at a lot closer because he's won his first major, may win a few more now. And of course, Rafa if he's fit, and Djokovic, it seems to be his tournament the last few years. Serena, if she plays at her best on the women's side, is the best player in the world. But maybe Sam can break through here this year.
Yeah, we hope so. As I said, 3.5 months and counting. Plenty to look forward to come January 2013.
Play at Australian Open 2013. Book a Ticketek now.
The brand new Australian Open TV commercial, and that gets us a little bit excited heading towards January next year. More to come shortly, Fitzy, on the greatest of all time debate, of course. But as we've heard today, the redevelopment of this precinct, and in particular Margaret Court Arena, is extremely exciting. And Margaret Court Arena, of course, is going to be the centrepiece when the event comes alive over the next few years, and you know, that's been the scene of some great action. We'll have a look at that in just a moment, but Margaret Court, it's going to be fantastic to have another roofed court here at Melbourne Park.
Oh yeah, the third covered stadium at the Australian Open. The Victorian Government and of course Tennis Australia going the next step to make this continually, we think, the best tournament in the world with the best facility.
Before we look ahead, I reckon we should just take a moment to look back, because some of the best matches have been, of course, on Margaret Court Arena. Show Court 1 was transformed to be named Margaret Court Arena back in 2003, an arena that has played host to some of the most memorable matches, and we'll take a look at a few of those coming up in just a moment, of course, named after the great Margaret Court. And of course 62 Grand Slam titles, 24 singles titles, 11 times she was an Australian Open champion. And Boris Becker, he won back in 91, Fitzy, but he had to earn it the hard way, starting out on Margaret Court in a 5-set epic.
You know, Omar Camporese was a very difficult customer. He had a huge forehand in those days, and it went the distance there. But Andrew Illy, we can always remember him. This was his famous trait. Yeah, he did that a few times.
Indeed he did. Wayne Arthurs, of course, signed off on Margaret Court Arena.
He did, lost complete feeling in his leg trying to get back on the court for this final singles match, and you can see how distraught he was there. A lot of drama.
And we really saw the emergence of Bernard Tomic.
Well, we did. He's won a lot of matches out there now, and he seems to really embrace that stadium. It'll be even better when the redevelopment finishes.
There was a popular man here at Melbourne Park, Fernando Gonzalez, of course, and plenty of great support.
Yeah, terrific player. You know, another South American here, David Nalbandian, last year got entangled into a few words with the authorities, and yeah, we remember that, don't we?
There it is. There is the famous racket Marcus Bagdatis broke. How many did he break? About 4, I think.
Oh, gee, I think a good 3. Yeah, he had a moment of madness, but look, he's a great character of the sport, I think, Marcus, and you know, we can forgive him for that, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. A very passionate man, and of course, when he made that final a few years ago, something we'll not forget. We'll keep that and treasure that. So many great memories. What a future lies ahead for this venue. No doubt the biggest attraction come 2015 will be up above.
55 years since his 1958 Australian Open triumph. Would you please welcome, holding the Sir Norman Brooks Challenge Cup, Ashley Cooper. Celebrating 40 years since her 1973 Australian Open title and 50 years since her 1963 title. Holding the Daphne Ackhurst Memorial Cup, please welcome Margaret Court.
Well, Fitzy, what an amazing sight. Great to have Margaret Court here and, of course, Ashley Cooper, two legends joining us today.
Oh, absolutely. If I can take the prerogative of just commenting a tiny bit on Ashley first. In 1958, Ashley won 3 of the 4 major championships. He fell in the semi-finals of the French Open, but he won Wimbledon, the Australian Open, and, of course, the US Open. Not many players have been able to do that in history. And I think when we take the debate of who was the greatest player of all time to the women's side of the game, I think the debate... there is a less of a debate there. Margaret Court, for me, is the greatest player that ever played. She's followed closely maybe by Martina Navratilova, maybe a little bit by Steffi Graf, but Margaret Court with her title, 64 major singles champions, 20 championships, 24 of those in Grand Slam singles, and of course 11 Australian Opens. She is Margaret Court, the legend.
No doubt about that. Very, very hard to argue, but Adrian Franklin's going to give us a little hand here because we've got plenty of legends of Australian tennis in the audience, Adrian, and we might ask them who they think is the greatest of all time.
Absolutely, BP. Now, I'm on the court and I've been trying to find a past champion to talk to me and let me know who is the greatest of all time. Now, if I just take a look around, I haven't quite been at Alicia Molik. Hello. Former world number 8 in the world, if you don't mind. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Great to be here.
Now, I've heard a rumour that you used to play doubles, junior doubles with the great Roger Federer. Is that right?
We never played doubles together, no, but on one of my first ever junior trips away with the Australian team, it was to Switzerland. I was only 15 at the time. Roger Federer was playing there. He had the long hair. He was coached by an Australian at the time, many would know. Peter Carter, so naturally the Australian team spent a lot of hours with the Swiss team, but he had a terrible temper back then. He was always a lovely guy, lovely gentleman, and even now, that's why I believe Roger Federer is one of the greats, because it's not just what he displays on the court, but he still takes that extra 10, 15 seconds off the court to stop and say hi and see how you're going. He still hasn't forgotten from way back when, so that's really lovely. We all love Roger Federer.
So you've mentioned that he is one of the greats. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot. Is he the greatest player? We can talk men, we can talk women. Who is the greatest player of all time?
I think Fitzy said it before, we can't argue with Margaret's titles. She's an absolute living legend. For me personally, having played in this era, of the greats playing right now, to me, yes, Roger is the greatest, and also because I think the manner in which he goes about his tennis, I think he is the complete player, and when you look at all surfaces and how demanding it is playing on the various surfaces from grass to clay to hard, Roger Federer can switch in and out as well as anyone in the world.
Well, you weren't so bad yourself. Ladies and gentlemen, former world number 8. Thank you very much, Alicia.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Been a big show, Fitzy. We've got a lot to look forward to. I'm going to give the final word to you.
Well, I'm not sure anyone can actually provide a definitive answer, Brad, on who is the greatest of all time. But look, if you can imagine, if right here, right now, on this court in front of us, we had Rod Laver at one end and we had Roger Federer at the other, just imagine.
This really has been one of the greatest matches we've seen. Roger Federer striding out to the middle of the court.
The great Rod Laver steps out at the northern end of the court. Can you believe it? Such an epic tussle deep into the 5th set, and now it all comes down to this.
Federer facing at the back of the court. He might look calm and collected on the outside, but I can tell you he's very, very nervous inside.
Laver strolls to the baseline. This is history in the making.
The eyes of the world are watching right now, this moment, which will settle everything. This is what everybody's been waiting for.
Laver pauses. You can sense the occasion. Now he leans forward and prepares to serve.
Both players with the weight of the world upon their shoulders.
Laver hurls the ball into the sky.
Today we have rewritten the history books, and the sport will never ever be the same again.
The legends embrace the net and the crowd are on their feet.
Tennis fans all over the world rise as one to hail these legends of our sport.
It's hard to go beyond Roger Federer because he's got 17, Grand Slam champions. He's played all around the world. His consistency has been unbelievable. There's no injuries, no fitness, no health problems. I think that I'd have to say that, comparison-wise, Roger certainly would have been ahead of myself.
I have great numbers, that back the case, especially with the Grand Slams. But then again, there's so many that couldn't play as many Grand Slams as we did, or in the past you just didn't choose to play all the Grand Slams you could have. And now it's very much Grand Slam driven, which at times is great, which at times is unfortunate. But I'm just happy with the career I've played so far, and I'm also in some ways happy that we actually will never able to tell who was the greatest of all time.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the official launch for the Australian Open 2013. Ticketek is the place to go for your tickets. We're going to look forward to welcoming you all back for the Grand Slam of Asia Pacific. Could I ask you, please, at this moment, just to remain in your seats? We would like to just have some lovely photos taken with Ashley and Margaret.
Welcome back, guys. So the launch has just wound up right now. So we're looking forward to January, when the first Grand Slam begins, the Australian Open. Obviously, a lot of talk on Twitter. We're still talking about who is the greatest player of all time. I just spoke to Alicia Mollick. She thinks Roger Federer. I've got my tweets here, so remember, #AusOpen. We'll be speaking for the next 20 to 30 minutes debriefing on what just occurred, talking about the Australian Open coming up. Some huge announcements. We had Steve Wood, the CEO of Tennis Australia, who spoke of an increase in prize money. Obviously, there's been huge talk recently about the prize money and that some of the lower ranked players perhaps don't receive a large enough proportion of the money. Well, that's potentially going to change because there is an increase. So the largest purse of any Grand Slam is at the Australian Open. As we see pictures there as well, it was brilliant to see the 2 trophies coming to the arena, and what an event that was. The launch is just winding up now. There'll be a press conference in not too long, and Brett Phillips will join me very soon just to recap on some of the biggest points to come of the official launch of Australian Open 2013. Margaret Court there, what a legend she is. There'll be a roof that's going to be assembled above the Margaret Court Arena, which will mean Melbourne Park has 3 covered venues. The only Grand Slam in the world now, the Australian Open, where we will have 3 roofed venues. So what a significant achievement that will be. So they've got the photos out and some ball kids heading onto the court for a bit of a photo opportunity as well. And Brett Phillips doing some of his finest work throughout the launch as well, with John Fitzgerald in the commentary position, the makeshift commentary position, if you don't mind. And Brett Phillips has just joined me back. Now, Brett, you were out there and you were chatting to John Fitzgerald. You did an exceptional job.
Thank you, Adrian.
If you don't mind, how did you think it all went?
Absolutely superb. I think I come here every year, and this launch gets bigger and better every single year. So we are looking forward to the tennis now. It's only 3.5 months away. That 3.5 months goes extremely quickly, and you think about the highlights as a sports fan, Adrian, in covering different sports, but the 2 weeks in January, I reckon, provides some of the most amazing highlights as a sports broadcaster, and if it's anything, set for an amazing January.
And I mentioned earlier, Steve Wood, the CEO of Tennis Australia, announced a huge coup. So the overall prize money is now at a record in 2013. From earlier this year, an increase of $4 million. So, Brett, obviously there's been a lot of talk about the prize money, so that's a real achievement now leading into next year.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think an increase, as you said, of $4 million. So that's... And as has been alluded to today, the players will also have some input into that as to how that is distributed, which is fair enough, and no doubt those talks will happen over the next 2 or 3 months. But $30 million in prize money, can't top that.
Yeah, definitely. Did you have a highlight of the launch? Obviously, you were, one of my highlights. There's no doubt about that. But did you have a bit of a highlight out there? Perhaps the trophies coming in, or Alicia Molik, maybe?
Your interview was superb, but to be right near Margaret Court. And I wasn't around when Margaret Court played. You read her stats, you look at Margaret Court, and she doesn't look a day over when she played. I mean, she's still in magnificent condition. She won 62 Grand Slam titles, 24 singles, and 11 times here in Australia. It's a phenomenal performance, and just to be right near her and feel her presence and to have her here is a really special moment.
And just on that, obviously, another roof on Margaret Court Arena. Not just that, though, the redevelopment at Melbourne Park at the moment. I'm around at Melbourne Park for a lot of the year, and it is incredible. The stadium, the precinct, is increasing hugely. There'll be more courts, some clay courts further down Swan Street. It's just going to be amazing when it's all finalised as well.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. I hadn't driven down here for a couple of months, coming into what is no doubt the best sporting precinct in the world, to have so many sporting facilities, including this great facility at Melbourne Park on the doorstep of the CBD. I don't see that existing in any other cap city around the world. It's coming along at a rapid rate. I think 2015 is sort of going to be the completion. They'll stop for a moment while we have 2 weeks of great tennis, and then they'll just keep building. It's going to be phenomenal, the end result.
Absolutely, and another announcement was the further push into Asia. Yep. So we've got the Asia Pacific playoff that's been announced by Steve Wood, and also the Asia Ball Kid Exchange program. So obviously with Li Na performing quite well over the past few years, and just so many people in China interested in tennis. So that's a great couple of initiatives there as well.
Well, we're wrapped that the Australian Open can stay here in Melbourne for the next ensuing period, and quite a long time, which is fantastic. But we do recognise that it is the Grand Slam Slam of the Asia Pacific. So I think the Australian Open organisers do a great job to have the trophy tour go through there, to have some lead-up sort of tournaments, and to really make Asia feel like they're part of the Australian Open.
And we've spoken a lot about the greatest player of all time. We had a few comments in there. Have you come to a bit of a conclusion, Brett?
It's too hard to answer, isn't it? I think Alicia summed it up best. It really depends which era you were born in. And I was unfortunate to see Rod Laver play. I've met Rod Laver, and what a great gentleman, and he comes back here, lives in California these days, comes back to Melbourne to have a stadium named after you suggest. And I've watched some old highlights, Adrian, on YouTube, and he was a very graceful player. Tennis was different back then. Of the current era, you can't go past what Roger Federer has done, the consistency of what he has done, not only to win 17 Grand Slams, but to make so many consecutive semi-finals and above. He has played at such a high level for the best part of the last decade, and it looks like there's a bit more left in him.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about some other players as well. Rafa Nadal, now Craig Tiley mentioned that he hopes to come back to the Australian Open as almost his first tournament after the injuries that he's had. Where do you think he's at? Do you think he can come back and challenge for that world #1 position?
Well, we hope so. I mean, that's the uncertainty of the men's game, and that's opened up a little door for Andy Murray to claim a US Open. Novak, it was always going to be tough to emulate what he did last year, 70 victories and Grand Slam titles. It was one of the most phenomenal years in tennis, and he slips back just a notch, still playing at a very, very high level, of course. We'd love to see Rafa come back so that quartet stays around the game, but we know that for years it's not Rafael Nadal's game that's the problem, it's the body, and he puts a lot of wear and tear on that body, particularly on the hard courts. He plays a very taxing game of tennis, and you hope he can come back. He may never ever be 100% fit, Adrian, but it'd be a shame if we didn't see the great warrior from Spain back playing at a high level. Absolutely.
And just a reminder, we are live and interactive, Twitter and Facebook, hashtag #OzOpen and hashtag GOAT as well, GOAT, your little favourite there, Brett. Now we've got a couple of comments here on Twitter. So Lily Catty Cat, I believe is what it states there. Really excited about this year's Australian Open launch, watching the live streaming, getting super excited about next year already. Football's over, Brett, so we start to look at tennis. We're looking into December as well with the December showdown, the qualifiers as well. There's a lot of tennis coming up.
It's a great build-up. We love the Australian Open wildcard playoff. Usually a couple of Australians, really young Australians, start to emerge, and what a prize to be able to get straight into the Grand Slam in that first round rather than have to go through qualifying in the 3 or 4 days in the lead-up is a massive carrot, and one that the players take very seriously. So we'll see all the young Australians who are ploughing it out on the tour, trying to win a spot. We saw Marinko Matosevic win it last year, and look what he's gone on to do, really submit himself now towards the top 50 in men's tennis. So that's to look forward to. Qualifying's great. We've got Hobart, Sydney, Brisbane, which just continues to go to a whole new level with, I think, Serena and Maria Sharapova are both confirmed. We've got the Hopman Cup, so it's a great build-up.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we've got some vision coming through now. Bernard Tomic, another player who will be very interested to see how he performs, been under a bit of pressure. Sam Stosur, another one. Where do you see her performing, do you think, in January?
Well, it's always the toughest, isn't it, to perform well at your own home Grand Slam. With the crowd right behind you, there's more expectation, and
with modified
I suppose there's been a bit of a history, not only Australian players, but players all around the globe. We see the pressure that Andy Murray's on when he plays at Wimbledon. We can only hope an Australian can go the journey. You just never discount this man on screen, Leighton Hewitt. There's no sign right now that he's going to retire. That body is holding itself by a thread, but he's still capable of playing an outstanding level of tennis, and he feeds off the crowd here at Melbourne Park. Sam Stosur, as Craig Tiley alluded to, third year in the top 10, and on her day, no doubt can defeat anyone. Up there with Serena for having the best serve in women's tennis and the most power off the ground, trying to put that consistency together. And let's hope this man's back as well. Marcos Baghdatis gave the rackets a bit of a workover last year. He can afford to go through 4 of them, but when he's at his best, going back, I think 2006 was the final here where he just played an unbelievable 2 weeks of tennis.
And there on the screen right now, and that's something synonymous with the Australian Open. A lot of colour, it's a bit of a party atmosphere, something for everyone down here at Melbourne Park. So there you have it. We're going to throw over to the press conference right now.
Yeah, look, we weren't budgeting for a bigger increase as we've delivered, and so we're going to have to manage through our business, but we'll be fine.
Did you feel your hand was forced by the players in that regard?
Well, we've been communicating with the players, and we believe that they need more compensation, and we support that, and we're proud to support them and make a major contribution to what it is that they need. So we're pleased to be able to deliver 30 million, which is a record in the history of the sport.
How will you work out the breakdown?
We're going to be consulting with the players on what sort of distribution they'd like, and we're off to Shanghai next week to talk to them and see how they'd like to carve up the $30 million prize money.
Is that now finalised, Steve, irrespective of their response?
Yeah, that's the final prize money that we've got in place.
Steve, were you planning an increase anyway? Because it does go up incrementally. Is this a much bigger jump than you've been looking at?
Well, if you look at our history over the last 5 years, we've been accelerating prize money faster than any tournament in the world, and we were continuing to do that. In this case, we accelerated even more, so we're pleased to do that and provide a world record prize money purse of $30 million is really pleasing. We're the innovator in this area, we're the leader, and we're pleased to keep leading in that regard.
Do you reckon it puts the issue to bed now?
Yeah, I think so. It's really important to reward the players, particularly the lower ranked players. It's something that we're really pleased to make a contribution towards, and having $30 million on prize money is a world record, and we're pleased to help them.
How much say will players get though? I mean, if players come back and say, well, we want $3 million for the prize winner and don't worry about the lowly ranked players. I mean, what percentages say are they going to have?
Well, we make the final call on how we distribute our prize money. We're looking for some input on that, which we'll be getting in due course. But to have a prize purse of $30 million on offer is something very significant and a major contribution by the Australian Open to the health of the sport. And that's something that we're really pleased with and glad we've been able to do that.
How soon are you expecting that input, Steve, from the players?
In the next couple of weeks, we'll be getting some input from the Player Council, for the ATP, and from the women's side as well. So over the next few weeks, we'll look at the input, and right before we go live at the Australian Open, we'll be announcing how we distribute the prize money.
How genuine were the threats, or are the threats?
I just think the players have been consulting to us and talking to us over the journey. Tennis is in a great place at this moment. The Grand Slams are growing as events, and the players are looking for more compensation, and we're happy to oblige. You know, we're in a good place ourselves and making a major contribution to the sport with our $30 million prize purse.
It's not a dangerous precedent in any way to cave into the demands?
No, we've got great relations with the players, and we've been able to consult with them and look at what it is that they're looking for as rewards and compensate them accordingly. So we're really pleased with that.
And it comes at the expense of what, like grassroots programs, or what this money that's been found, what would it have been spent on otherwise?
Oh, look, the extra money that we've put into prize money is part of the overall business of Tennis Australia, and we've got a healthy, strong business, and we're pleased to make the contribution to the sport and to the players, and to the Australian Open as a great icon event.
Given it's the amendment we're agitating, is the commitment to equal prize money still there?
Absolutely, yes. We'll be paying equal prize money to both the men and the women.
Steve, what about the redevelopment? I mean, is that also a bid to stave off any potential move of the Slam to China or to India or anywhere else like that, the increase in facilities?
Oh, the increase in facilities really just makes us stronger as a Grand Slam, and to have the world-leading prize money, which we've enjoyed that position for many years already, and to accelerate that to the position now at $30 million, it just really cements our position as a Grand Slam in the Asia Pacific and all around the world.
Are you worried about it being moved offshore at some stage in the future?
Well, look, we control and run the Australian Open. Tennis Australia does that, and we can put the prize money to the levels that we need to compensate the players, and we've got the world's best facilities being built now, so we feel we're in a great position to continue the growth of the Australian Open, and particularly now that we're here for 25 years into the future. That's giving our broadcasters, our sponsors, our commercial partners great confidence in the future with us, and that's part of the reason our business is growing as strongly as it is.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you.
Welcome back. We were just reminiscing, weren't we? About 2012 and that magnificent final.
It was magnificent.
We're still talking about it.
No doubt, no doubt. So that was the CEO of Tennis Australia, Mr. Steve Wood. He's brought so much to this event. He's really expanded it. And we are going to go to the tournament director of the Australian Open, Craig Tiley.
Experience that we're having, but you know, the consultation that we've got going on throughout the year is something that we'll continue to do, and I think that's why the players look at the Australian Open as the event that's the closest to them.
Crisis averted? Is that it now?
You know, absolutely. We're players have got 30 million reasons now to come to the Australian Open in January, and you know, our prize money pool from the last 5 years we've increased to $10 million. We've continued to lead the way in that, and this year we've gone up to 30 million, which is a significant jump. But 30 million reasons to come play the Australian Open in January.
One of their claims was for a greater share, a fixed share of the revenue. Was that entertained?
No, we're about compensating on a scale that the business really does each year, and we've communicated that to the playing group about how we're going to pay and what we're going to pay, and we've got some positive feedback, and along with our philosophy of consultation with the playing group, that's why we've held off on actually announcing what the distribution is going to be, because we want to get their input on that distribution.
In terms of the breakdown, I know you've still got to work it out, but you talked about compensating the lower ranked players, and when do you expect, say, first and second rounders to have a massive jump in prize money?
Well, we're focusing the most part of that distribution in the first week, which will be generally your first through the fourth round, and to get the balance right. And again, that's in our communication with the playing group throughout the year has been really focused on doing that. And we'll have some models to present to the players, which they can give their input on, and then we'll make a decision.
Hopefully a return for Rafael Nadal. Obviously, a couple of weeks ago, he picked up a racket since injuring his knee at Wimbledon. Yeah. Is it a sort of a big call hoping to play in the Australian Open?
If you know Rafa Nadal, he'll be here. So it always surprises what he gets up to compete in. But he did text last week and had direct communication with him, and he's planning to be back towards the end of the year and definitely play the Australian Open.
Craig, did you contact him, or was it vice versa?
No, we contacted him, but I showed a picture earlier which he sent just out of the blue last week, just to remind us that he's still. It's a good reminder for us, him laying on the towel doing his warm-ups and his stretches, that he wants to be here and he loves the Australian Open.
Did he indicate when he would start playing again?
Towards the end of the year. He is playing now, but towards the end of the year as far as competitively, and he wants the first Grand Slam, the first major event to be back. I expect him to play before that, though.
Certain percentages you think he'll be here?
Absolutely, yeah.
So if he didn't indicate whether he was playing exhibitions or real ATP tournaments?
I don't think he's made that decision yet, but he's 100% indicated that he'll be here in January.
There wasn't a lot of talk about Sam Stosur in anything today, really. Last year she was obviously quite a face, and she appeared to struggle under that pressure. Will she be part of the marketing campaign, a real face this year, or has she been withdrawn from that?
Absolutely. We talk about Sam Stosur every day. She's the most recent Grand Slam champion. We communicate with Sam and Dave Taylor, her coach, and she's on a good run. She's currently 9 in the world, maintained that top 10 status the last 3 years. And it wasn't long ago where she was very close again to beating Azarenka, who's probably playing the best tennis in the world together with Serena Williams. So Sam will be front and centre of our campaign. She deserves to be.
So given you've done this with the prize money, Craig, would it be fair to say that you thought it was a realistic thing that the men could boycott this tournament?
Anytime we are faced with conversation or threat around the Australian Open, we're going to respond, and we're going to take it seriously. But this has been we've just accelerated earlier, this has been part of our ongoing plan, and to increase prize money. And I think it's really important to note that this is about an investment in our future, and it's the future of the Australian Open. And as we've stated before many times, any of the revenues we generate, we do invest into prize money, and we invest into the grassroots and the development of the sport in Australia, and we do that 100% with all the revenues.
And what about Bernard Tomic? Is he going to get that same sort of saloon passage he's enjoyed recently?
Well, I think Bernard's definitely going through this year the growing pains of becoming a top professional tennis player. He's currently 39 in the world. He's maintained that 30 through 40 position throughout the year, which is in itself remarkable. The youngest player in the top 100, coming off I think last year having a very successful run at Wimbledon with the quarterfinals. But Bernard's still young, and Bernard's got a long career ahead of him, and we expect him to again be in front of the Australian Open crowd and perform well. Bernard is, you read a lot and see a lot about Bernard, but I've known Bernard since he's a young kid. He loves nothing more than to compete. He's fearless in competition, and I think that's why he's going to be a great player.
Leighton Hewitt, any feedback from him that's not going to be his finale, or organising any parties or farewells?
No, we're not organising anything other than getting Leighton ready for his match in January, and he sets the bar on how to compete, so I think we're going to see a lot more of Leighton.
Are you mindful of how much pressure there are on Australians playing in front of their home crowd, especially with Sam Stosur last year, and the pressure on a young kid like Tom?
I think it's a very tough thing. I think, you know, in the Australian Open and it's the same things happen at Wimbledon with you know, the British players, the US, and in France, and with the French players at the French Open. It's a very tough thing with your home crowd, the expectations everyone puts on you, but we remind the athletes it's about their own expectations that they place on themselves, and really trying to block out everyone else's expectations. But that's what you say, and how they respond is different. But you know, we're very excited about some of the young up-and-coming players, and we think we're in for a great future, and hope to have some great Australian entertainment for our homegrown crowd.
Just on Margaret Court Arena, can you just explain the building process there and what's that's going to bring?
If you get an opportunity to go out there today and have a look, it's a construction site right now, and we're in the process of putting a roof on Margaret Court Arena to give us 3 stadiums with a retractable roof. And you know, we're on track to deliver that by 2015. But for this 2013 Open, we'll stop the build and still utilise the court. And we've actually also extended on Court 6, added more stands there as well for more player seating. So, and what we announced earlier around the venue is going to be probably the best the venue has ever looked with the Eastern Plaza, the new venue on the other side of Hisense. And we're in for a great 2013.
So no impact on scheduling at all in terms of
No, scheduling, there'll be no impact on scheduling. In fact, we'll be helped because we've got additional court on site with what I mentioned earlier, practice row. We're going to showcase the practice of the players. And then of course, with the Eastern Plaza, adding 8 indoor courts and 5 outdoor courts for practice. So we will have no scheduling complications.
So is Margaret Court going to have, a decreased capacity this year though?
Margaret Court will have, on site the capacity is all the same. Margaret Court, the top tier, because of construction, won't be there, but that's been replaced on Court 6 by additional seating as well. So actually right across the site there's more shade and more seating. Well, I think the Hawkeye is obviously initiative and innovation. We're again, one of the first to enjoy that. We have it on 5 courts now. That's electronic line calling, and we'll move eventually to have it on all our match courts. But for now, we're putting on our 5 show courts. The players enjoy it, the officials enjoy it, and I think it's also entertaining for the crowd.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So there you have it, the tournament director, Craig Tiley, just talking about what's to come in January. And that wraps up the 2013 Australian Open launch. Brett Phillips, well done. You're a star. You enjoyed today?
Been great fun. We know October's arrived. That means we're counting down to Australian Open 2013, Adrian. Cannot wait. The best of the best, the men's and the women's in town, and bring it on.
Thanks very much for your company. We look forward to the summer of tennis, December and January, not too far away. Enjoy your day, and we will see you very soon.
This is the crowning achievement for my whole career to have this be the Labour Stadium.
If I've done it once, maybe I can do it twice. Why not?
You know that when you go out there, you hope to be the champion at the end of the day.
Played a lot of the Australian Opens, and I've seen it change a bit over the years, and it's been a great tournament for me.
I love you guys out here. Like, it's the best I've ever played any tournament in my whole life.
We're going to end up with the best facilities in the world for Grand Slam tennis.
One of sport's great modern-day rivalries produces yet another epic clash. Victoria Azarenka fulfills the dream. Novak Djokovic is the champion in Melbourne for the 3rd time. That was simply extraordinary.
Good morning, everybody. You're one of the best players ever, and you're one of the most respected guys on the tour.
Excellent.
We made a history tonight.